Can you be a leader and have absolutely no feelings involved?
Yeah.
You can make a lot of money. Yeah. Can you become a massive conglomerate and gobble up a bunch of companies and raid a bunch of companies? Yeah. You gonna be happy? I would argue the point, probably not.
Right.
Probably be pretty lonely.
What is going on, guys? Welcome to Be Frank Podcast. Today we have a special guest who is an entrepreneur. If you guys are lost in the journey, and like a mental health, physical health, spiritual health, I think we went talk about a lot about mental health today. But if you guys are looking to different career, maybe lost in the leadership position, maybe this episode might be good for you. So welcome to special guest, Adam Coury.
Thanks for having me on today. I appreciate it.
Episode 64. So I started this conversation asking what were you doing 5 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So that'll be 2019. So what were you doing 2019?
2019, I was running a service company here in Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had.
You want to say the name?
Yeah, it was called Swift Services.
Yeah. It's like that's how we met. That's crazy.
Yeah, that was how we met back in the day. You recorded a commercial for us.
Yeah.
And I ad-libbed, and I think that I licked the tile on the floor.
Yeah.
And the tile was not clean.
Yeah, false advertising. But yeah, it's okay. Nobody noticed. So you were doing that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I did that for 8 years.
Yeah.
So the guy that owned the company was a really good friend of mine, and he had a nightclub in Oklahoma City. And previously I had worked in the service industry for all the way up until like 25, 26. And then he started that service business. And at first it was just supposed to be a carpet cleaning company.
Yeah.
And, it ended up growing into a pest control company and then growing into a decorative concrete company. And so I ended up being there for about 8 years. It was one of the greatest learning experiences I've ever had.
Got you. As far as like a business goes, or like a running management system, that kind of stuff?
Just all of it, just life experience. It was trial by fire.
Yeah.
I think during the time I really resented the guy that owned it a lot.
Yeah.
And the reason is because he was making me do things that was hard. He made me write all the budgets and projections. He made me write the policy and procedure manuals. He made me hire and fire. He made me do the maintenance on the vehicles. I had to get certified in mold remediation, pest control. Each time we started a new service, I had to problem solve. So, during the time, it was very overwhelming, and I knew that I was getting underpaid. But in retrospect, it was one of the biggest blessings that I've ever had happen in my life.
That's very interesting. I was thinking about the same thing, but when you have employees, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like you say, you're kind of resentful towards to the person you're working for.
Right.
And then whenever you're telling your team member, all that kind of stuff, I have the same kind of thing. Say, they're not happy, but someday you're going to thank me in my head. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is there like any way you can communicate to them, say, hey, we're kind of doing for you, essentially. Or it's kind of doing for the company, but how can a management people can ease that resentment towards to the management? Do you teach that too?
Yeah, so I'm blessed enough through going through that. It has now led me into what do you want me to talk about what I'm doing now?
Oh, no, but kind of. But
okay, well, I'll just tell you in reference to, we'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah. I think really just asking pointed questions,
right,
and really making the people feel appreciated and heard. I look at a lot of organizations now, and I think, especially in our generation, people don't have purpose.
Right.
They don't have meaning. They don't understand why.
Right.
You look at, have you ever watched Simon Sinek's Why Talk?
Yeah.
So he really talks about that inside out versus outside in thinking.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of organizations really harp on what people do and how they do it.
Yeah.
But not why. And I think that co-creative conversations and really asking out of curiosity your employees what their perspective is allows them to feel or have ownership more so than you directing. And I think the more of those conversations you can have and the more curious of a leader that you can be, the more you're actually you're going to draw out genuine answers.
Right. Curiosity is very important. So that's why I'm like asking, like, be curious and ask every guest first time is like, what advice would you give yourself 5 years ago if you can talk to him right now?
Not to be as hard on himself.
Why is that?
I was growing up, I had a narrative in my head that if you're not perfect, then it doesn't work. And so I think my entire life I went through, growing up, I was a compulsive liar. Like I would lie about everything just to make myself feel better. And I really think I dragged a lot of that into my professional career, not lying as much, but just like always projecting this image of having it together instead of genuinely asking for help. And I think a lot of that goes back to like, a lot of, as a leader, a lot of times we'll have grace on employees or whatever, but like if you don't have grace on yourself, you will build resentment. And so just having grace and allowing myself to have patience during that time,
right,
and allowing myself through that grace to understand that I don't have it all figured out. And I'm 35 now. And whenever I'm 80 years old and whenever I die, I'll never have it all figured out. But really allowing myself at that time period to understand the fact that you're never going to have it all figured out and to give yourself a little bit of grace.
That's a good part to figure it out is that to figure it out, you will never figure it out in a way. But like, so what are you doing now?
Yeah. So through that, I ended up exiting that company. There were just some misalignments. If you're going to go into an agreement, one of the very valuable lessons I learned is make sure that, especially if it's with a friend, make sure that the terms are written down whenever everything starts out. That way there's expectations.
Important. Yeah. Was that a partnership?
So it was not. No. So I worked for the company, but I was an independent contractor.
Gotcha.
And then the long-term goal I believe both of us had was for me to get a vested ownership position in the company. Whenever we reached that position to where it was like, well, we've gone for a long time, we didn't have anything written. And so both of our definitions were a little bit different. At least my expectations were, because I never defined them. And there's a lot that goes into that, but we hit a point to where under circumstances that I ended up exiting the company and left. And so I look back at that as one of the biggest blessings in my life now.
Gotcha. So after you left, or like before you left, did you already started like a new venture?
So I had started, ironically enough, my dad was an entrepreneur. So I've always had that entrepreneur spirit. So I'm always tinkering with other things. I'd started doing woodworking. So I do my art. I think everybody should have a personal why, a career why, and then an art or community why. So I think you should have like 3 different aspects. And like, your art, you could make money, you might not, but like something you really enjoy that you can like create with.
Right.
That like is nothing but just pure passion.
Gotcha.
And so I started the woodworking, didn't plan on making money on it, but I'd started generating a little bit of revenue, which gave me a little bit of runway whenever I exited. And then I had a lot of skill sets that was built into what I did for that company. The craziest thing was this was right in the process of getting prepared to have a daughter. And so it was during pregnancy and everything. So it was super crazy. And I ended up falling into a career in doing outside sales for the nation's largest home improvement company.
Outside sales. What is outside sales?
So outside sales is basically a company contracts your company or depending on how you have it structured.
Okay.
The correct way would be is you have a company that contracts your business or S Corp to go and convey their product to whatever the end user is. So door-to-door sales, like they basically set the appointments. I show up, I close the deal. And I did that for about 2 years. And during that process, I went from being one of the lowest guys in the company to I was the top rep in the country whenever I ended up leaving out of 10,000 plus sales reps.
Damn. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was incredible. And I attribute a lot of that to the things that I learned during that process that I hated.
Right.
Because I had to learn a lot of people skills and understand the way that people worked.
And then now you are giving that to community to coach people to do that?
Correct. So that with the culmination, again, like, our perception is so powerful.
Yeah.
Like how we perceive our past is so powerful, man.
Yeah.
And a lot of people want to look at their past and they want to allow victimhood to creep in and they want to go, well, I'm just going to dwell in my past and that's where I'm going to stay. I'm fortunate enough through getting slapped in the face enough times in life that I started really unpacking my backpack, if you will, and started looking at all of those past lessons to then convey into tools that I could use now.
Yeah.
And so earlier this year, I took a culmination of that. I ended up leaving the outside sales gig. started doing outside sales and just process consulting for a couple different companies. And at the start of this year, launched a purpose coaching program called Solving Why. So that is currently what I'm doing.
So you're doing consulting and then coaching?
So Solving Why is really, it is a purpose coaching program. But as a part of that or an add-on, we can also go in and help build processes in your company. So after we go through and train your company and we train your people how to figure out their individualistic purpose, then we can figure out their career purpose, their community purpose. And then if you want to put all these pieces together into a process to where you don't have to bring me in and train constantly, we can help build a process for you and then train your leadership to actually integrate that process for long stay. Because companies are only as valuable as their processes. And that's in my personal opinion.
Man, that is awesome. I would love to talk about different things it's going on for us.
Yeah.
About the AI stuff, but this is not a podcast with the idea, but we'll talk about that later. But how do you see yourself in 5 years?
Through this program, I really have helped people, or what my passion is hope. So what my why is and what I try to, I think we overcomplicate life.
Yeah.
Like, it's money, it's material, it's all these things. Like really all of us just want to serve other people.
Yeah.
And so through this training program, it's funny, whenever you start building stuff, which I'm sure you can relate to this, you start discovering things about yourself. Whenever you try to start teaching people, if you're aware and curious, like you start learning about yourself.
Yeah.
So through that process, my life word is hope.
Yeah.
Like that's what my purpose is. Like long term, if I die whenever I leave here today, and you're the one that speaks at my funeral, I hope that you stand up and say, you know what, that guy provided hope. And how I do that is I share broken stories in my own personal life and seemingly unsurmountable circumstances to allow God's light to shine through all of my imperfections, to let every person know that regardless of what your circumstance is, regardless of how dark it might seem, there's always hope.
Yeah.
So what I hope for is over the next 5 years, I continue inspiring people and really am a part of changing corporate culture and personal culture to facilitate an environment where people can find purpose in their life beyond material and outer projections.
Awesome. So like, that's why is that kind of connected to the podcast you're doing too?
Yeah.
Like, because like a backpack theory podcast, right?
Correct.
So like, what is backpack theory?
The backpack theory is basically, I started writing a book actually while I was working at that company called the Backpack Theory. I started looking around and I started looking at myself, and I just noticed so many people that were acting right now based off of experiences that they had growing up. And a lot of them, they would talk about those experiences, but they wouldn't correlate the action now with that past hurt.
Right.
And so on the Backpack Theory, what we do is we go on the podcast and we talk to guests that want to be vulnerable about what they went through growing up, and talk about like a moment of brokenness or a moment where they felt like there was no overcoming it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden something snapped and they started unpacking that backpack. They started unpacking those hurts. They started going in and like changing their neuro pathways to choose positive outlets versus negative outlets.
Yeah.
And that's what we talk about on the podcast, is just how can we overcome our past to allow ourselves to live in the present so that we can define a better future. Yeah.
That is beautiful, man. I mean, honestly, it's not like a literal, but like I have been to a backpacking trip in Colorado. We'll mention that like a mountain something. Me and the 5 of our buddies went with a 50-pound backpack, 50 miles in 5 days, and then without no like cell phone, whatever. And then we went there, and then like I think at the end of the day, I was talking to somebody and then said like, how many shit in our life we put it in a backpack so that we have to carry along, so that it's just heavy.
Yeah.
It's just tiring, and then we just have to let it go, because like at the end, because that was very, very like educational for us in the life, in the sense of like, man, like day by day, it gets easier, but it gets harder at the same time. It's not one way or another, but it's like so many people, myself too. Like I carry so many stuff, even running a business, having a business, or doing stuff that take responsibility or the guilt or responsibility or whatever I have, I put it on my shoulder.
Mhm.
And then I'm just gonna go for it. Like today we were doing like 40 pounds. So like if you just let it go, I thought that was funny. You say when we went to rock climbing, when we put a weight vest, and then you didn't tell me this, but afterwards you say my form got better.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of like a life lesson too, in a way, of like whenever you struggle to do certain things and that you wanted to get better, is that sometimes you have to go through the shit and then you have to carry the biggest, heaviest backpack in your life. But after that, you get better,
Yeah.
essentially. I don't know, like it's your podcast, but you know what I mean? Like, is that kind of like things you teach? And then like what I was amazed about whenever I was watching your podcast is like you are good at finding that heavy moments, heavy things in people's like a life, I guess.
Mhm.
How, because like you do the podcast, how do you find it to like the people to speak out of the heaviest things? Because it's like normally people doesn't want to talk about it, right? So like, what do you do to find that heavy thing in their backpack, essentially?
Those are great questions. That was great insight whenever it came to just talking about the backpack and the analogy and things being heavy and just your thought process in relation to that. It's just beautiful. And I just want to like,
Thanks.
it's really good. I mean, you've
Yeah.
sorted through a lot of stuff. You know, man, like we live in a world
Yeah.
where you live in social media,
Yeah.
you live in superficial,
Right.
you live in everybody wanting everybody to see the best possible version.
Yeah.
But that's not always the real version.
Yeah.
And I think in society today, we're really lost. I think it's one of the reasons that you have people quitting their jobs. I think that's why antidepressants and SSRIs is the number one prescribed medication in the country.
Yeah.
Everybody's on an Adderall to overproduce so that they can go buy things to impress people that they don't even like, right?
Yeah.
Everybody wants like the all-star family and the car and everything. And all those are just little micro escapes. And I think the only way to break that down is to look inward and go, well, if I'm doing those things, like, why am I doing that? And I started doing that through, over the last 2 years, which I don't want to get into too much detail. But, I really went through a point of brokenness that I've never experienced before, to where I really had to look inside and go, like, what am I running away from? And through that discovery process, I started sharing these feelings. Like, one of the reasons I love my podcast is because it was a great way for me to actually start taking ownership in a public setting over all the things that I was ashamed of.
Yeah.
And I think through doing that, the more I started talking to people, and on my interviews, I do like a 30-minute pre-interview.
Yeah.
And in that, I ask the people just honest questions, and I care about them. It's not about me. It's not about the views. Like, I care about them. And whenever I am talking to someone, the first thing I make sure is I let them know if they're going through something, dude, like, I've gone through something similar. I've gone through something worse. Not to like one up them, but to let them know, like, you're not alone.
Yeah.
Like, I am not perfect. Like, I'm completely imperfect. And I think whenever you open up conversations with that level of transparency and that level of honesty, not to manipulate, but to just let someone know where you're at and the fact that you might feel where they're coming from, it facilitates an environment for them to open up. And so I think the more curious we are about other people and the less judgmental we are, and the less we care about our ego, the more that people will open up. And so whenever I'm having those conversations, I'm blessed enough to where these people open up.
Yeah.
But a lot of that starts with transparency will breed transparency, and just looking for those moments. And it's really a sense, it's a feel, it's understanding cortisol versus oxytocin, and just you see them almost as they're talking about something, like they almost skip over it, because it's a painful thing. And whenever they do that, I'm like, okay, there's something there. And then I just go back and revisit that moment. And it's just one of my favorite things on the podcast is whenever at the very end, someone says, I've never thought about that way before.
Yeah.
And it's just a little nugget or a little blessing. It's not me, it's insight, it's everything that I've gone through. It's them. And so that's really what I look for, is just when people are trying to skip over something,
Mm-hmm.
and you can just tell there's a little bit of pain there.
Got you. And then essentially you open up yourself about it, honesty, and then they will kind of give it to you.
Correct.
I mean, it's interesting. You talk a lot about, like, when we went dinner, like you were talking about oxytocin, cortisol, and the brain chemical when you have a conversation. You kind of referring to conversational intelligence. You referred to me about the book.
Yeah.
It was interesting, but do you kind of explain it to me? I'm like a child. What is like cortisol and oxytocin that whenever, like, while you're having the conversation?
Yeah, so cortisol levels. Well, first I'm going to bring up a study. So there was a study they did recently. It was last year, and they took a set of teenage girls and they split it into two.
Mm-hmm.
And in that group, they took half of those girls and they had them text their mother. So just do text conversations all day. They took the other half and had them call their mothers and have shorter conversations. The interesting thing about that is cortisol is the stress hormone. It is the typical stress hormone. Cortisol, which I've done a lot of research on here recently, is one of the leading causes of cancer, one of the leading causes of blood pressure issues, one of the leading causes of mental health issues. Well, the interesting thing about this study is that cortisol levels in the girls that were texting their parents skyrocketed because they were assuming. They were worried, like, when am I going to get a response, right? Like, there wasn't a human connection. It was a digital to digital connection, which can leave rocks unturned.
Mm-hmm.
So it built up cortisol or anxiety, stress. It's the stress hormone. The girls that called their parents actually created high levels of oxytocin. Oxytocin is the bonding chemical. It's the feel-good chemical. It's the love chemical, right? It's the love hormone. It's whenever you're bonding with someone and, like, you feel like they understand you, you actually bond with them on a chemical level. And the interesting thing about that study, and why I bring that up, is I think that cortisol levels, it's hard to gauge them because they come and go. But statistically speaking, in our society today, we have a lot of cortisol producing activities, a lot of high stress activities, and we coat that with high dopamine activities, watching TV, or there's a million different things, drinking, drugging, all of these escapisms that produce feel-good chemicals to conquer that cortisol, and the cortisol levels go back up.
Yeah.
And so cortisol is, to break it down simply, I just wanted to use that as an example, but cortisol is basically your stress hormone, and then oxytocin is the opposite. So whenever you're having conversations, the more oxytocin you create, the more that you'll actually bond and connect with other people on a deeper level.
So how do you create oxytocin?
Oxytocin?
Oxytocin.
Oxycontin with little sorry. No, it's all right. So there was an interesting, so that book, Conversational Intelligence, which I'm flattered that you ended up going, is by a lady named Judith Gasser, who passed in 2018, but she did high level coaching for high level executives.
Yeah.
So how do you produce oxytocin? The interesting thing is that she did some research in relation to topics, being curious, being genuine, being yourself, increasing your theory of mind, which is in 1979, there was that phrase was coined as like empathy.
Yeah.
Like how you view other people.
Right.
The more curious you are, the more genuine and the more transparent you are with your feelings, the more that someone else can actually receive those feelings.
So is that coming from just from the one-sided? Because like whenever I'm curious about it, let's say I'm curious about you, I'm asking you a question. People say, like Being Friends with the Influence, that book, I've read it so many times, I just can't say the title of that book. But
How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie.
So it's just like let them speak more than you speak or whatever. But so from my end, I'm asking it, I'm curious that my oxytocin level is higher, right?
Correct.
Is from the receiving end,
Mhm.
do they produce oxytocin as well?
If you're doing it genuinely, people can actually sense from a 10-foot radius what you're actually putting off. So your chemical release, people can actually sense that from a 10-foot area. Have you ever heard the term sales breath?
No.
Okay, so like in sales, if you are a salesperson and you are a car salesperson,
Like a sleazy salesman?
sleazy salesman, you
Yeah.
go in and you start off with a cortisol statement. Hey, folks, how are you doing? Right? It's nice to see you. What are we going to get you in? Right?
Right.
That's an oxytocin or a warming feeling. It disarms the person.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then what they do is basically then they get you in the hot seat. They get you in the closing room. The reason they get you in the closing room is they go from being the nice guy producing oxytocin, and they get you in the closing room and they start creating cortisol levels. What cortisol does is it heightens your fear, your fight and flight. It makes it to where that's why so many people, they'll go and buy a car and then 3 days later, why did I do that?
Right.
It's because they were in a fight or flight mechanism that was induced by the car salesman.
Right.
And so the same thing can happen if a salesperson or an employee or a manager gets just really ticked off and they don't feel understood or they don't feel heard. Whenever you're trying to force the point, someone can sense you're trying to force the point. Whenever you're trying to manipulate, even if it's on a very low level, people can sense there's something not right about this.
Yeah.
That's sales breath. Is people pick up on that.
Right.
Whenever you are extending oxytocin, whenever you are opening yourself up, whenever I look at you and I go, man, like, I really appreciate you as a person. And I mean that. And you know that I mean that because that's just how I feel. People pick up on that.
Gotcha. So that will create everybody else become happier, essentially.
It opens them up to the conversation to where they can then receive it. Now, it doesn't always mean that someone's going to reciprocate, but you increase your chances tremendously of them reciprocating those kind of environments and conversations.
Got you. What do you think about like whenever you're doing coaching, right?
Mhm.
And then like being curious, being like, having a better conversation, truth to be feeling, like whenever their team member is not doing good and then they have to have a hard conversation, what do you teach them?
You're talking about leadership?
Yeah.
So if leadership, I think that a lot of times if there is a problem, there's probably a missing process first. There was probably unrealistic expectations that were set on the employee.
Interesting. So you start from there.
So that's first what I would look at is I would figure out what are our processes and then figure out on ownership or leadership, like, did we fail the process? If the process was not failed and the employee feels like they are still misheard or misunderstood and like we figured out the process in place and they're disobeying, there could be a conflict of interest. They could have something outside of work. There could be a lot of different things. So understanding what level of conversation have you had with them, who's their direct supervisor, and just observing the situation to get a little bit more context. Now, I would never I am not a big believer in like cornering someone and like just saying, like, I would say that if you want to get to the bottom of someone being wounded, you bring them in and just ask them questions.
Yeah.
My dad is an ethics professor at Oklahoma Christian University, probably he's got a master's in business, one of the smartest conversational people I've ever met.
Nice.
And anytime I would get super frustrated running business or doing whatever, he would always say, you're talking a lot. How much are you asking? And I would start reflecting. I would go, I didn't ask him anything. Well, they're never going to give you the answer. It's not forcing you. A true leader takes true interest in not the action, but the person.
Yeah. Some like a quote said, like, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. You should listen more. But that's interesting. So like, do you think as a leadership or like running a business, do you think that feeling is not that important?
What do you mean?
So, like I have a hard time sometimes whenever I'm running a business because I run small business, right? So I tell my employees all the time, say, hey, I treat you guys like my cousin. Like you're not like my brother or sister, family, that kind of closeness, but I treat you guys as a cousin. Like I care about you. You guys need move stuff weekend, or you have a significant other problem or whatever. Like I want to be the person like I will listen whatever you need, and if you have a mental health, and I know shit goes down to your personal life,
Mm,
and then when that kind of things happens, just talk to me,
mm,
and then we figure it a way.
mm.
And then whenever you're happy and not happy, it just goes, those kind of stuff. So I'm trying to do is like feeling is important,
Yeah.
but on the other side, I know process is important,
Mhm.
but like sounds to me, it's like, well, process is important, but sometimes I have to give people a leeway to do that. But finding out that balance is hard things. But like sounds to me, that you were saying about as far as leadership is ask question and then like have the boundary, that kind of stuff. Does that make sense? So like my question is can you become a good leader without having no considering no feelings, if that makes sense?
Can you be a leader and have absolutely no feelings involved?
Yeah.
You can make a lot of money. Yeah. Can you make a lot of money? Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you become a massive conglomerate and gobble up a bunch of companies and raid a bunch of companies? Yeah. You gonna be happy? I would argue the point, probably not.
Right.
Probably be pretty lonely.
Yeah.
I think that one of our problems whenever it comes to corporate America, whenever it comes to just the ethos of the machine is more important than the man, is the fact that it's an egotistical thing. The majority of the time is where the problem runs down to. It's wanting to control versus relinquishing control. And the crazy thing is everybody really just wants peace.
Right.
We really call a spade a spade. Like deep down, everybody wants peace, right? Like that's what they want.
Yeah.
And so I would say that you can make a lot of money, but it's subjective to what your definition is of being a true leader.
Okay. When you teach leadership to the leaders, where is the line, or where do you draw the line with like how much you can help to extend the help? You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
You have to have a process in place.
Yeah.
And that process has to be conveyed to the person up front. Then you extend grace through the process and you work with them. But if they don't adhere to the process, then it doesn't matter. They don't want to be there.
Got you.
So I ask everybody this question. Why are you here in this room with me today on this podcast? Why are you? I'm asking you.
The reason is, honestly, we met, like we kind of reunited like a month ago, I'll say. And then whenever you were talking to me about fitness, mental, and the spiritual health, and then most importantly, what I learned from you that night on the dinner is like I always thought about spiritual health was kind of voodoo-ish, like a kind of stuff. But like when you told us like spiritual health is equals like wisdom. And I just kind of like had an aha moment for me, like you were saying, like I didn't think it that way. And then like you were telling me a whole bunch of different things, and then okay, this guy knows a lot of stuff. And then I really like that way that you thinking, and then you have the knowledge that you can articulate the word. And then I think that a lot of people wanted to hear this. And then if I can just have you onto my podcast, I would like to ask you a question for myself, but also like people who listen to this episode will probably benefit from it. I mean, that's also I wanted to go rock climbing, so but that's kind of like a why,
Hey, I want to acknowledge it's a beautiful answer, and I'm flattered that you would say all that. A lot of that is just my relationship with God and the fact that I've gone through a lot of brokenness and I've tried to run through walls that I should have never tried to run through, and I should have just surrendered.
Yeah.
The answer to the question is the reason you're here is because you chose to be here.
Yeah.
It's just simple.
Yeah, that's simple. Yeah.
If you have employees,
yeah,
that you have processes in place,
yeah,
you've set proper expectations, you have invested in their purpose,
yeah,
you've given them strikes, you've gone and you've been curious about where they're at,
yeah,
you have facilitated an environment for growth, the answer is they don't want to be there. That's the true answer. And so like on all my trainings, the first question I ask people whenever they walk in is, why are you here? Normally they give an answer just like you did. There's nothing wrong with that answer, but the simplicity of the fact that you literally don't do anything you don't want to do.
Yeah.
Period. Even if someone's got a gun to your head, right?
Right.
Someone's got a gun to your head and they're like, I'm going to shoot you right now.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
You still choose whether or not you're going to let them shoot you.
Mm.
You choose to surrender in the moment or not. One
Yeah.
could argue a million ways. Well, I have to. No, you don't have to.
Right.
You're choosing to.
Yeah.
It is a choice. Everything you do in life is a choice. Whenever it comes to employees, I mean, if you run a business and you're an entrepreneur, you have to have processes in place to hold people accountable or else it's chaos, right?
Yeah.
There's got to be some kind of ethos. There's got to be some kind of like accountability metric. And you can go and be a true leader and lead by example all you want. And sometimes people just want to be there, don't want to be there. And sometimes letting someone go is the best thing that you could do for them.
Yeah. I mean, that's a beautiful answer, but I just was thinking about in my head that the reason I said about like I care about people and I ask go through my feelings is probably I don't have a good process and expectation laid down. So like to probably cover it up, I have to work more harder or go hard route, say, hey, I'm helping their personality or impersonal stuff. Yes, but maybe I just don't have a good enough process and expectation laid out. So maybe I'm just covering that aspect of it. And then if I can't have a good process and expectation, which is we worked on it last couple of years, like
Yeah.
process. But yeah, I think it was kind of, it's good that you said that because of long time ago, one guy told me that I deserve my employees because I'm the one hire them. I'm the one pay them, train them, tell them what to do. So if they're good employee or not good employee, pretty much I deserve it, you know? So like whenever I was talking about, man, I do so much sometimes, maybe I just need to go back to, you know, expectation and process. Go back to one, you know? So I'm thankful. Like I just had that moment in my head, but I'm just talking to myself. But how did you, is there like, how did you came about that way? Or like, do you think that you do run your business that way? Or like, do you think you're still figuring it out?
I think
your
I'm
business?
always figuring it out.
Yeah.
I'm always figuring it out.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful process. I think I learned the hardest lessons in relation to that whenever I ran the service company and I would build these processes and I would repeatedly allow people to break those processes. And a lot of times I looked back on it and it was an egotistical thing because I was the one that set the process and I felt like I failed. And so I would then allow them to repeatedly break that process because I had poor boundaries. And also the more that I allowed them to break processes, I could break the processes.
Yeah.
And so you let people get out of trouble over and over again. Then if you end up getting out, if you end up needing to call in, or if you've got an appointment you got to move, it's a lot easier to give yourself an excuse ticket of, well, I can get out of that now. Right. And so like the biggest thing about being a leader is like holding yourself accountable for what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And like, you know, setting realistic expectations on yourself. I mean, right now, my goal is to scale up because I have a portfolio of different companies.
Right.
This is my primary purpose and long-term goal.
Yeah.
But like, you know, I still, even though like I work primarily by myself,
Yeah.
like I still have to, I hold myself accountable, you know? And so I think the more you hold yourself accountable and the more you build those processes for yourself, the more, and you set realistic expectations. That's the other thing. A lot of people will go in and they'll build processes and they're so unrealistic and they never get feedback from anybody else.
Right.
And in their mind, this process makes sense for me and I'm going to expect everybody to adhere to it, but they never got input from anybody else. And so grabbing that input from your team, like I've got a company I'm about to coach here soon. And I met with them. It's a group of people that are a certain personality type to where they have one-way thinking.
Right.
And so they don't have great customer service skills.
Yeah.
They don't have great relational skills. They don't have great theory of mind or oxytocin production. It's much more just straightforward. And the guy that owns the company came to me and was like, well, I really want to do a process build and I really want to help teach these people how to negotiate and communicate. I'm like, well, I can do that, but what do they think about it? And he's like, well, I haven't asked them. I'm like, dude, we need, if I can go in and teach something until I'm blue in the face because you told them to, unless you have some of the key team members give input on me coming in, like it's going to be a very hard sell.
Yeah.
And so he's facilitating an environment to where I'm going to sit down with his leaders, but not only his leaders, his most difficult employees.
Yeah.
So that they feel heard, so that whenever we go do the training,
Yeah.
there's a facilitated environment for everybody feeling like they have a voice.
That makes sense. That's just exactly like the book did. But also like that when you said about interesting, you said your process was wrong, that you kept let your people break it, right? And then you broke it, right? How did you fix that problem?
It was hard because after you let the cat out of the bag, like it's really hard to put it back in.
Yeah.
So I then had to suck my ego up, start holding myself accountable, and I asked my office manager to write me up. So I started asking my office manager to write me up. So if I messed up and I did something wrong, I would have them write me up. I had an accountability process that held me accountable. And so then whenever people started messing up, I'd go, I wrote myself up for this. And they'd go, whatever. And I'd be like, no, here's my write up. And so I started holding myself accountable. After a couple times, I didn't do it anymore, but I held myself to the same standard that I also asked of them. And as I started doing that, at first it was tough because the people that I had allowed to get away were some of my highest performers.
Yeah.
And so they were all ticked off. And like, well, I'm not doing this. And I'm like, well, then I'll write you up. It's not about you. It's not about me. It's about the fact that the ship's going this way and you want to go that way. Whenever you're going that way, people are having to work around this person, which is taking time away, which is our most valuable asset. On average, we only get 1.5 million hours in our life. No, it's it's not even hours. It's like 1.5 million minutes. And you're going to use those working around someone
right
consistently.
Yeah.
Like you're wasting, not only are they wasting your time and your energy, they're not honoring themselves.
Yeah.
Accountability and processes actually allow people to honor their own time.
Yeah.
It's a hard recognition, but that's really what it's about. And the more that they honor their time and they actually honor their value, the more that everybody else will honor their value in their own time.
Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, essentially you built a new process and expectation, and then you kind of punish yourself in a way so they have to follow it. Then if they don't want to do it, they don't want to be there. Essentially.
Yeah.
It's kind of harder to do it that way, but to fix it, go back to one essentially.
Yep.
Makes sense. It's
And
pretty
get
simple.
everybody else's opinion on it. Like, why is this process not working?
Right.
Be honest. Like, why is it not working?
Right.
And then you step up to the plate and you go, this is why I don't think it's working.
Right.
And you just say your honest opinion.
Yeah.
If you can get someone else to come in to say something first, that's ideal.
Right.
But that's not always going to happen. And so sometimes you just got to step up to the plate and take the bullet for the team. You
Yeah.
say, here's what I think is wrong with the process.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, honestly, like you are very successful, and I think a lot of people is learning from you, having podcasts, and you have a beautiful house, and then you can work out, you have freedom, I guess. I think that's like a great way to be where you want to be, like a career, right? Like, because you're trying like build a career that you can do work for yourself, right? But if somebody who are watching this video is maybe going to college, maybe they're working for somebody else, right? So from their perspective, to be a coach like you is going to be a lot harder than like, you can't just overnight, hey, be a coach, right? What steps do they need to take to have a life like you?
I think the first thing is figure out who you are. Not who you want people to think you to be. There's a big difference between those two things. There's a degree of separation that's very minute when it comes to the statement. But if you don't know who you are, I don't care what role you're in.
How do you figure out who you are? Like, can you tell me who you are?
Yeah, I mean, I told you I'm hope.
Oh, okay. So it's a purpose.
It's a purpose.
Okay.
Like, who are you at a core? Like, I'm a broken vessel that has made a lot of mistakes in my life. I've tried to run through a lot of walls I shouldn't have run through, and I am a human.
Right.
And I'm never going to be perfect. But the thing, whenever you accept that you're not perfect, it allows you to maybe hit excellent.
So do you think that, you know, you have to figure out who you are as a person is the first step, right?
I think so.
But like I sometimes believe I say this to a lot of people. People disagree with me, but I say, well, you just want to figure out who you want to be, essentially. Because what my philosophy is, if you can see it, if you can think about it, if you have balls to say it out loud to people, all you have to do is do it.
Mm.
So it's not really doesn't matter where I am today. If I say I want to be this person, I want to become this person, then just think about it, visualize it, and then say it out loud, and then hold it accountable to yourself, and just be that person. Because like I don't know, who I am some point, but I know who I wanted to become.
Mhm.
And then like I think from 5 years ago from myself to now, I'm making a progress.
Mhm.
So I think, like people tell me, say, hey, I would rather not say my dreams are, hopes are, or like say out loud. I just make it happen. That's what people say to me. But I'm like, I just say it out loud because everybody will either look at me crazy, that become my feels. Everybody just some people support me, some people see my vision and then go with me. That's why I just talk about it. I say stuff exactly how it's gonna be. But it's interesting to me. You say first step is to figure out who you are because in that point, that my sense is like, well, maybe it doesn't matter who they are right now. What would you kind of say to that?
Well, a couple of things. I completely agree with you whenever it comes to saying what you want to become.
Right.
There's a beautiful book I just finished reading called Neuro-Linguistic Programming
Mm.
and the power of words and how you talk to yourself
Yeah.
and what you say about yourself out loud is who you will become.
Mm.
We're not much different than computers,
Right.
except there's a lot of organisms and a lot of mechanics. Like we were beautifully engineered and created. Like our bodies, dude. My girlfriend is studying psychiatry,
Mm.
and the
Interesting.
amount of just intricacy whenever it comes to like our neurological system
Mm-hmm.
is absolutely unbelievable.
Mm.
And so whenever you look at a human being,
Mm.
what you say is what will you become. In relation to what you're saying about like, I look at who I am and I evolve, like you will evolve. But I think that what you're working towards has to have a purpose.
Yeah.
And if you don't understand what your purpose is, like if your purpose is just to go, maybe there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Like maybe there's not a big problem with that.
Yeah.
But I would argue that I've known a lot of people who have just worked. One of my really good buddies, actually, dude was, he was probably 50 whenever I met him. Super loaded, had a Ferrari, had a jet, everything that you could think conceivably anybody would want. He was just a go guy.
Yeah.
I remember so many conversations having with him, and he was so miserable because his entire purpose was a material value. He didn't know who he was. He knew what he had, but he didn't know who he was, and he didn't know why he had done it all.
He didn't have a purpose.
He didn't have a purpose. He worked, he went, he grew, he evolved, but didn't have a purpose. Unfortunately, he's no longer here with us because he hit a point to where everybody just valued what he had, not who he was, because he didn't know who he was. And so the reason that I think purpose is so imperative whenever it comes to our evolution, whenever it comes to our growth, is because if you're just working towards materialism or something grandiose, you'll get there. But if you reach there and then you go, why did I do this? What was it all for in the first place?
Interesting. Very interesting because you're saying that makes sense now because you're saying figure out who you are. And I was like, that's interesting, the answer. But essentially, what you're saying is who you are as yourself is hope, right? Essentially, that's a purpose. So if you're saying that to those people who wanting to have a lifestyle or have, kind of career like you, is essentially first step is to find a purpose. Is that correct?
Find a purpose, and then you'll find yourself. In my coaching program, so the very first section, I ask 8 questions that are brutally hard.
Okay.
Because you can only answer them with one word. If I haven't sent this to you, I will.
All right.
It's one word you can only answer them with.
All right.
And everybody wants to overcomplicate everything in life.
Yeah.
I think that if you can find...
You want to ask those 8 questions right now?
I don't have them.
Oh, okay.
I can pull it on my phone if you want me to. But we can post it to the thing and do a follow-up podcast.
Okay, cool.
But my point being is that we overcomplicate things. Yeah. It's like whenever I asked you earlier, and again, this is nothing against you. I ask these questions all the time. Yeah. And I myself find myself rambling on many times or like overcomplicating or whatever it may be. So this is like all of us do this.
Yeah.
But we so overcomplicate the process that a lot of times it's really hard to find out who we are. And so in my first coaching program, the reason I ask 8 questions and ask people to answer those with one word is to simplify the process. And I think that if you can just find one word or one cause or one thing that you can work towards, one thing that is brought up whenever you die. And if it's money, that's fine. Like if it's money, monetary, if you want cars, if you want a lifestyle, like that's fine. I'm just telling you from my personal perspective and meeting a lot of billionaires, millionaires. I mean, I've partied with Rob Gronkowski before. I have done some crazy stuff in my life. And the level of misery that I've seen in people or the lack of purpose that I've seen whenever it seems like they climb the highest mountain is just staggering because they never knew who they were. They just worked hard.
Right.
And so figuring out a word through that, and that's what we do in that first training, like finding a purpose, like your personal purpose. It has nothing to do with your career, I think is so imperative because then that allows you, regardless of what your career is, regardless of how hard your life is right now.
Yeah.
Like you can still keep on moving forward because your purpose is larger than yourself.
That is fucking beautiful, man. I mean, your purpose is hope to show that, to share that to people.
Yeah. My hope is, dude, I told you earlier, like my purpose is sharing stories of imperfections in my own life, seemingly unsurmountable circumstances that I've experienced to allow God's light to shine through all of my imperfections. All the moments that everybody else thinks or could think is ugly. Like I want people to see hope through all of those imperfections. And if I do that every day and I leave this conversation with you and I go get hit and you stand up at my funeral and you're like, dude, the last conversation I had with that guy, he inspired hope in me. That's all I could ask for.
Yeah.
And that's what we should be living for every day. Like it's not about the money. It's not about the cars. In Western culture, that's what we tell ourselves. I'm sorry, it's BS. It all will be gone. The legacy you leave and the lives you impact is who you are.
Yeah.
And figuring out what that looks like for yourself outside of your career is where you will find joy.
Man, like American dream is to have a house and kids and family, right? I mean, honestly, like my hope, my dream right now is to provide mental healthcare for whole world.
I love that.
I mean, that's what I'm working on with the AI system I was going for, and then I think that we will be able to make shit ton of money from companies, small businesses, and different kind of things.
Right.
And then we are releasing mid-May, but after that, I believe what we have. And but after that, we are talking with people to using artificial intelligence to have the, those kind of things we can probably make money. But we wanted to offer that to everybody for free.
Right.
If we can do that, then I lost people from the mental health and all that kind of stuff. And then if somebody have a choice to have it without considering about time, where to be, also money, right? Finance to pay for therapy is hard, right? But if they can have a free access to that system and every single person in the world, then we can just we don't have to go through government to offer free healthcare. I can do it. We can do it ourselves.
Right.
So we can do it. We can do it ourselves. So we can do it. 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 We can right now that's like my effort going to, and then my purpose is that to like help out to change, essentially try to change the world. I mean, that's what my purpose is. But of course I want to have nice things and all that kind of things. But I think if I can just do that to people, I think I would love that to have it, and then everybody who I lost will be happy too.
I was going to ask, why are you so passionate about mental health?
I think I went to I grew up, I thought mental health was bullshit.
Mm.
And then I went through it myself. And then almost, went to dark side, and I was almost probably not be here today.
Mm.
And then I have had many, not many, but couple friends that not here today. So I don't want that feeling ever again. And also, it is a real thing, and that I go through it, and that I see it every day, and that I see that every hope, every opportunity is crushed because of that. Because people then don't take it seriously. Also, people masculine energy or whatever, and then people say don't therapy is for like a girl or whatever. I think we passed that maybe, but still here. But also myself, I say that to YouTube and podcasts all the time. I go therapy. It's a good thing. It's helpful. And then the big thing is I don't want to lose who I love. Also, I don't want to lose myself, and then I don't want anybody else to go through that easy. And I just want people to take it seriously, because I think that's what people need.
You said that's beautiful. And thank you for your transparency, man. I've been there.
Yeah.
I've been there where I thought it was BS and I didn't take it into account. And there's a lot of relationships in my life.
Right.
I overlooked what they were going through, and really internalized what they were going through, or downplayed it or whatever it was, because I didn't want to look in the mirror at what I actually had going on.
Right.
And so it's beautiful that you're able to articulate that and share that in such a transparent manner. And that's so powerful. And I think that the one thing you said that I want to just commend you on is you said, well, I want to solve world mental health, but on the way I might make a bunch of money.
Yeah.
But your purpose is not money. Your purpose, the way you stated it, was mental health forward.
Yeah, because I have to have money to.
The money then funds it. In the Bible, which is my favorite book.
Yeah.
It talks about enjoying the fruits of your labor.
Yeah.
It is the fruits of the labor is something that we are supposed to enjoy.
Right.
But if we get caught up in life laboring for the fruits, we just become a slave to the thing that we think we need to make a difference.
Yeah.
You should be making a difference. And when you make a difference, financial security, vacations, all of that stuff is a byproduct of your purpose.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, then and you lose that selfishness, you die to that ego. You realize that you're human.
Yeah.
You start serving a higher purpose. You start serving this thing we call connectivity or God or whatever consciousness is, right? Yeah. The more you serve that thing and you serve yourself less, the more purpose you will find, whether it's at dinner, whether it's in a podcast episode, whether it's driving down the street in your car, listening to a song that triggers a memory and you just break down crying from a healing moment. That purpose, that passion is what I want to see people have, because we're slaves to an idea of happiness and we strive our entire lives for the weekend.
Yeah.
We don't think that we can make a difference. We lie to ourselves. We say, I can't, instead of I can. And we literally linguistically program our neurons and program our thought process to, I can't do these things because I am not worthy. And I'll tell you right now, dude, I've never met a person that I haven't seen that's worthy of greatness. Never have I once met a perfect person that I don't believe in. I've seen people in really dark holes. I've seen people that it seems insurmountable. I've seen people depressed. I've seen people on the edge. And one of my friends here recently that almost went there. And I've seen that guy over the last month just completely transform because people invested in him. People stopped and stepped outside of themselves to let him know that they cared about him. We have a Tuesday night men's group. He was a part of that men's group. Every single guy in that group, one guy, we did it on call. One guy in the morning would call him, one guy at night would call him. One guy in the next morning would call him, one guy at night would call him to let him know that we're in it with him. And I think as society, we're so individualistic. We have a tinge of narcissism built into our blood that it's so hard to get outside of ourselves because we want to project this image of masculinity or perfection that is not possible.
Yeah, I totally believe that. I mean, also, like, I believe that if you're like just be part of it, try to help it individual, and then try to help to for the cause, it might make a little bit difference. But if you want to make a huge difference, I mean, this is like I remember like whenever I was in the I was a kid, and then in Japan there's like a police TV show.
Mm.
In Japanese, cop can't shoot anybody because they can't have a gun,
Mm.
And then like a people on the ground, and the cop says to that his best friend inside of like a boardroom, and he calls say, "Hey, I need to shoot this guy or whatever." And then he says, "No, no, 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 because you can't do this, all that kind of stuff." And then they're having a cup ramen, like a suit guy with like like a detective kind of guy. And then that guy in the office says, "I'm doing this because I don't want you to do the right things right now. But I can't change the world if I'm not on the top of the top. Because if I do this for you right now to do the right things, then if I just go fall down, and then society or like a whole entire organization will win. So the world will never change." So he is making a sacrifice now to become a top to do that. So essentially, what I believe is I believe what you said, but at the same time, also I believe that, you know, not being materialistic or anything like that, if like having $1 million to say, let's help the world mental health, that's cute, sound like. But if you're talking about the bigger scale, then if you make that big scale, then literally you can change the world. So I think that's the what I'm trying to do now. Then I mean, I would love to come talk to you about it.
Mm.
And then I think that I don't know, I just believe that, I don't really care what other people will do, but like I people say about, the healthcare and the mental health and all that kind of stuff. It's nice to do it individually. And then I think that I would love to be that person that can change the whole thing so that other people can come with to the change.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know what in my head it works. But I would love to come talk to you about that. And then honestly, I would love to ask you more questions, and then I wish I could have went to about your things, but time is time. I guess like you need to go soon. So that any how can people who are listening to this podcast can support you?
Yeah, how people can support me. So I lost my mother Sunday this week, and it was a long battle with cancer, and it was one of the most interesting journeys I've ever been on. And people all week have asked me that question: how can I support you? How can I support your family? This is going to sound cheesy, but I mean it from the bottom of my heart. If you want to support me, get real with yourself. Get honest with yourself. Go talk to that friend. Go talk to your mom. Go talk to the person you have a broken relationship with. Go be the difference that you want to see in the world, and stop holding back and telling yourself you can't do it. I have some financial goals and everything, but it's really gone to the back burner. What I really want to see is I want to see a transformed world. I want to see people that care. I want to see humanity become humanity again. I want to see community growth. I want to see people smile more. I want to see people take care of themselves. I want to see people care and have purpose. So in honor of my mom, if you're going to do something and you want to support me, get honest with yourself and go make a difference.
That is beautiful, man. I mean, thanks for coming. So sorry for your loss. And then I can't I'm so I was like so ashamed. Like whenever you text me, I didn't even know what wake me meant. And I was like, okay, I thought that was like treatment or something. But yeah, I'm super grateful you took a time today to go rock climbing with me, and then having this podcast and do all this stuff. And then I don't know, I would love to, you know, be around with the people like yourself that like I don't know, it's just nice to have people actually trying to do stuff and be nice things, and then have a different thought process, but also like same lane, if that makes sense. It's really hard to find a people like that. And then I appreciate so much of you coming here, taking your time, and I don't really know what you're going through, but honestly, you can call me, or you can I know you don't drink, but I'll drink coffee or whatever you need to. Then I mean even go rock climbing with you,
That
whatever.
works too. Well, a couple of things. Number one, thanks for having me on. My mom, the reason I'm here today is because this is what my mom would want me to do. I think that's where the purpose comes into play.
Yeah.
Through pain and everything else, if you have purpose, all the rest of it is just there. Like, this is what she would want me to do. This is what would make her proud. And I'll tell you right now, man, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of your goals. I'm proud of your ambitions. I'm proud of the way that you've constructed yourself. Dude, like, I mean, I can see genuine care, and I can see like genuine want for growth. And just what you said, whenever I asked you, why are you here? Like, you're looking, you're leaning, you're growing, you're doing the things and taking the risks that most people are scared to do. And so I really want to speak that truth into you and tell you that I really believe in you and what you're doing. And I'm honored to be here with you today. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, man. Well, I guess this will conclude this podcast. I'll see you guys next week with what I would like to say, but I'll see you guys soon. Peace.